Anybody who can hear us? Just let me know, Blake, if my audio is decent or not.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
getting it right now.
And then you'll probably want to have you and Jen talk a little bit to make sure that your audio levels are good too.
Yeah, one moment.
What was that? Doop 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 doop.
Yes, you sound fine.
Okay.
Doop 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 boop boop doop boop boop.
You guys good? Or are you too loud, too quiet?
I sound fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Well, we'll just leave this up for a couple seconds, and then as people jump in, I guess. Yeah, I don't want to pull it up on my screen because then it'll do the thing. It looks like I don't see anybody in the chat yet. Just Jen, the artist.
That's me.
Yeah, it is you. I think this is like one of the first times that we've actually had all of all our ducks in a row when it comes to doing a live stream. You guys just see the Inns and Outcast logo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. We'll have to compose a theme for our thing and make some sort of chat overlay and I don't know stuff. Do the things. Make the custom stuff. Get involved. Do all the streams.
Do all the streams.
Yep. Maybe not all the streams. You should only stick to the rivers and the streams that you're used to, right?
Right.
And never chase waterfalls.
Yes.
Yes.
Seems like a pretty sound bit of advice, really.
Sounds painful.
Yeah. I mean, like the downside to chasing waterfalls is like, the end of that scenario is never good. Unless I guess you're a real big thrill seeker. But your kayak's probably not going to love you too much afterward.
Unless it's a barrel and, Niagara Falls.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got some chance. This is an interesting start to a stream.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if anything, we can always trim this part out when we bring it over to YouTube, right? Is it possible to trim your streams when they're on Twitch, or does it just automatically post whatever you post?
I think I could highlight specifically from one portion to another, which would keep it around longer and have it only be the one part.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. I have yet to get into like the editing software for this. So
Oh, looks like we have someone in chat.
yeah. It's Emily.
It's Emily.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Now that I read the name.
So I think it's hilarious that we're talking to Emily on Discord. Oh, it's time to start. So let's do our beautiful transition. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Ask Me Anything event. I'm Andy with Game Changing Designs, and we're here to talk to you about any questions, comments, or concerns, or just, general questions you have about us in general. But we're mainly here to answer questions about our Kickstarter. We really appreciate everybody who's taken the time to back us already. It's been awesome watching the backer level just kind of grow and see us reach our goal or inch closer to our goal every day. So to everyone out there who is backing our project, thank you so much. You're really helping put bring our vision to life and get our game in the hands of people who want it in a nice finished public thing. So yeah, without further ado, let me introduce. I've also got our other two members of Game Changing Designs on audio here. Jen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Jen. I'm the artist for Inns and Outcasts. I also do a lot of the graphic design work as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Blake, game designer and social media person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Social media doer.
Yeah, Blake makes most of our social media posts. I'd say at least 80 to 90% of our posts come from Blake. I occasionally will pop on and do a post. If you see a post in like a group doing like game design discussion, that might be me. But usually it's if it's got the Game Changing Designs page or the Ins and Outcast page, it's probably Blake or Twitter. Um, but yeah, I'm Andy. I do game design as well. I dabble in the graphic design and I do kind of whatever needs to be done from the extremes of whatever Jen needs done. I help try and translate into what we need, and then whatever Blake needs done, I try to translate to what we need. So I kind of serve as the middle circuit for a lot of this stuff. I also do a lot of outreach. So if you recognize me, I was the guy at Gen Con running around handing out cards like crazy. And if you're a Peoria Con attender, I was the guy at the booth. So that's me. That's what I do. So yeah. Well, we actually have a couple questions that came from people who responded to our form that I posted on our project update tab. So I'm going to go through those questions first. Let's see. To start things off, Fitzgerald asks, is this game inspired by Dungeons and Dragons specifically, or is it inspired by role-playing games in general? How did you decide to choose what classes to represent with the characters? So to that end, I mean, yes, this game is heavily influenced by Dungeons and Dragons, but the world of Ins and Outcasts actually is kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different fantasy realms and worlds just kind of mishmashed together. The original uh, concept of where Ins and Outcasts comes from is from this project that I worked on when I was at Bradley University. We made a game called Mimicry, which was a point and click adventure. And it was student work, so it was rough, but in the process, I had to generate a bunch of lore and content. And we came up with this kind of like tongue in cheek fantasy world. And the idea is like, what happens if you have essentially a high fantasy tourist trap? So we took I took a bunch of cues from some of my favorite authors like Neil Gaiman and Patricia C. Reed and Terry Pratchett, like lots of high fantasy comedy elements. And like the idea is, if you have the city that's a little bit like Ankh-Morpork and a little bit like every other D&D town, it's got that insidious nature to it of everybody's out on the grift, everybody's trying to separate you from your hard-earned money. And the idea is everyone wants to go to the city because it's the city of destiny. It was a successful rebranding effort that basically got everybody to go, oh, I need to find my destiny. I'll go to the city of destiny. I hear they have that, like they'll have the answers. So every adventurer and mercenary and villain all go to this basically very touristy town that's filled with a lot of accoutrements and things for adventurers to see and do. But it's all paper thin. There's nothing to really keep people there. So the idea is that everybody kind of just breezes through the town all the time, and all that's left is the inns and the outcasts. So yes, this game is definitely inspired by D&D, but other fantasy tropes and genres in general.
Yeah, specifically, one that kind of was something of my input. The dwarf is called a thane, which is obviously it's a title from medieval or whatever Europe, but in Warhammer Fantasy, that's a common title for a dwarf, and that's kind of why I wanted the name to be that, because something about it just seemed right, especially with the kind of character we wanted to give the dwarf.
Isn't Thane? I think Thane is Scottish in origin.
Yeah, there's it it has a different definition in a few different places, but there is one Scottish specifically that ours is most closely tied to.
Mm-hmm. And then to get to the second part of that question, the how did we choose which characters to represent, which classes to represent the characters with? We're actually not. We're trying to separate the characters from specific classes. That's why there isn't like necessary. I mean, I know thief is a class in D&D, as is bard, but there's no guard class, there's no thane class, there's no goblins class. The idea is we kind of wanted to like represent the character, and that way if people wanted to take these characters that we're making and stat them out, they have that wiggle room to be like, oh well, this little trio of goblins, that guy looks like he is 110% going to be, a rogue that specializes in bomb making. And then you can stat that out in D&D or Pathfinder 2.0 or GURPS, whatever system you like. We were the vague name system and the representation is to allow you to take the character and run with it. And if it serves as a starting point for you, awesome. That's exactly what we're going for. There's obviously a little overlap. The bard is definitely a bard. And bard is a class, but it was also a character type. So that's what we were going for when we were trying to represent characters. And in future expansions that we were kind of working on, we kind of continue that. Some of the titles and stuff are based off of the theme of the inn that they're at. Some of it's based off of other fantasy tropes too. So anything you want to toss in there, Blake, too, or Jen?
I mean, I think you pretty much covered it with that. Obviously we want to the class names are really just common fantasy words. It's not that they're classes. It's just kind of the best thing to describe the character we made.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're more suggestions than like some sort of crunchy thing that you would then go into a book and then, oh, if you go to page 32 of the player's handbook, this paragraph, subsection, subclass B, like we're not trying to, give you like a crunchy system to work off of. We want it to be loose so you can interpret it as you want. Because I like making components that can be used in other stuff. And heck, if we can save a DM 10 minutes and have him be like, you encounter a thief, and he just picks up the card and shows it to the players, that helps cut down on the amount of work he has to do or she has to do to, to generate what that character looks like.
Mm.
So, okay. One of the next questions that we have is from Carolyn. They ask, how long does it take to learn, or how long does it take to learn how to play? And that is an interesting question. The shortest answer I can give you is it takes about 2 rounds of the gameplay experience to learn how to play. Like we've done hours and hours and hours of playtesting, and that depends on your group size and it depends on how you encounter the game the first time. But generally, by the second round of the game, everybody at the table pretty much has it figured out. So we're going to be putting out a how to play video to help cut down learning time, because some people are visual learners, some people like to read the rule book. We want to provide you all the tools we can to get you in the game as quick as possible. The gameplay itself around takes about 30 minutes. Even with 8 players, it's still about 30 minutes. We've been, we've done a lot to kind of like mitigate interactions and cut down on the amount of time people can hold the game up by doing a lot of stuff with simultaneous play. So it's pretty consistent at about 35, maybe 40 minutes with a big group, especially if you got people who like to stop and really think about what they're doing. But I'd say actual learning time, probably 15 to 20 minutes if you're just reading the rule book. But you can probably cut that down to like 5 to 10 minutes if we get a good video going that represents stuff visually. So.
And I think a good kind of sub question to tag onto this is, like, how hard is the game to learn? Like, would somebody who's not versed in board games at all be able to play this game? And I would say, it's got a lot more to it than your standard Monopoly or whatever, or Sorry, Aggravation, that kind of stuff. But it's on the lower end of complexity when you get into the more quote unquote crunchy board games.
Yeah, I think what's kind of nice about our game is that essentially it lets you think of it kind of like a bike that you can change gears on. If you really want to get into the big brain play by play, I'm going to analyze everything, let me get into my mind palace, you can do that. We've had lots of games where people absolutely try to figure out everything ahead of time, and it's slow and intentional and careful. And then, we have other people who just focus on what they're doing and try to do their thing the best they can, as quick as they can. And then we have other people who eventually just go, I'm just going to play a card. Like, at the end of the day, you can just randomly play a card and see where that gets you. And
it works because then you're throwing off people's predictions of you.
Yep. So you can make the game as you can engage with it at multiple levels, which I think is what makes it a lot more appealing to different age groups and different age ranges. So, like, when I play, I tend to do the big brain thing. I like to sit there and really think about it, and you'll see me put down a card and pick it back up probably about 3 times, and then it'll be like, Andy, and I'm like, okay, I'll play the card. And then I'll usually just get my butt handed to me anyway, because I'm apparently predictable. So like, if you ever watch our YouTube or our live streams from Twitch, I tend to get trounced. I think I've won once in the last 5 or 6 times we played, but that's okay. It's not it's the other thing that's nice about this is it goes quick enough that I don't feel, when I lose, I'm not upset about it. Like, I'm like, oh, let's play again, and I'll see if I can get you next time. It doesn't lead to that same level of aggravation that, like, I get if I lose at a game of, like, what's a good one?
Twilight Imperium.
Yeah, or like a Weekend Killer. I've played games where like, I think we did Order of the Stick, the big Weekend Killer version of it, and by the end of that, it was just like people were about ready to come to blows because of how rough that particular experience went. So it can be a little tough, but this game's a little bit more lighter. And I guess Munchkin is another one that I don't get angry about. I just get tired sometimes because
well, the thing that happens in Munchkin is everyone piles on, and our game doesn't have as much ability for everyone to just pile on and screw you over.
Right.
Like,
you can pump the brakes. But like, it's really hard for everybody to, like, routinely stop the person that's in the lead. Like, they're probably going to cross the finish line, but that doesn't mean that they're going to win.
And they usually have a way to counterplay that.
This is true. So
that being said, I love Munchkin personally, so it's not. I'm not saying bad things about Munchkin.
Oh, I mean, Munchkin's a fine game. For me, it's not my cup of tea. Like, the games I play, we make the classic mistakes with Munchkin, which is playing with more people than is recommended and mixing in too many sets. And then, like, when you do that, it can go very sideways very quick. But that's what happens whenever you kind of, like, play by your own rules anyway. The games are balanced in a specific way for a reason.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's it's a roughly 30-minute experience. And again, I'd say 15 minutes to play if you're going by reading the rule book, but you can whittle that down pretty quickly, especially if you've got someone who's played the game and demonstrating it right there. Like, that can usually lead to, like, a 5-minute walkthrough. Like, all the rules are going to be printed on your playmat, so if you have any questions, you can pretty much just look down at your card while you're waiting for your card to flip and be like, okay, I know what I have to do.
And if anyone hears this who has played it before and is thinking, what are you talking about? This game is not 30 minutes. We have made adjustments.
Well, and
particularly for like 8 players.
yeah, 8-player games. One of the big things that's different from what we did at Gen Con is now we have a variable level of coins that you need to get to end the game. It used to be 75, which is great for like a 4 to 5-player game. That's kind of where we were testing everything. But when we tested with 8 players, we learned that okay, we need to be able to pump the brakes a little bit and get people across that finish line because 8 people are going to have more interactions, and that's just going to need more time to get things going. But we've also had, we played with people like it still works well in those smaller cases because we kind of go back up to that original number. Yep. Okay. Well, the last question that we've got on the pre-registered question side is from Sophie. It's if funded, do you plan to sell your game at stores? And that is a fantastic question. And the answer is I would love to. That would be great. But we're a game design studio, not so much a publisher. Yes, we're self-publishing a game. We do have membership in the Indie Game Alliance. So we can distribute through them, from what I understand. And I would love to have enough copies to be able to do reorders and sell through stores. But to hit that level of success, it's going to probably take a lot more than just what our base funding level is. The Kickstarter would have to take off pretty significantly for us to be able to do that directly. Now, I'd love to work with a publisher. We have considered submitting our game to a couple different game publishers just to have them take on the difficulty of publishing because we're learning all the complications that come with publishing, but we were aware of some of it. But like to be able to get you a reliable amount of product to sell in a store, I would want to have a dedicated publisher to be able to provide that. For us to manage that plus our other projects would be I don't know if it's 100% in our financial structure to be able to do that, because we're really more geared towards developing like the next round of content for this game. We have about 6 expansions figured out. We have the next expansion done. It's designed and tested and in the can. We just have to finish the art for it and get it in its final state. But one of the things that we've made for our backer tiers is the innkeeper level that's brand new. That is specifically for people who want to sell this through a store. The other side of the coin is it's really hard for us to sell internationally. We can do big batches of printing, but international shipping right now is a bit of a mess, from what I can gather. So getting things fulfilled to multinational venues is going to be tricky. So to, I guess, wrap that question up, we would love to sell through stores. To do that, I think we'd prefer to work with a publisher directly and let them take the lion's share of the profit to, kind of weigh against that cost. So long as we're getting enough to keep the lights on, kind of thing. And then to let us continue to generate content too. So the other side of that is we've talked to a couple publishers, and one of the things is we do want to continue to make content for a game, and that's a little tricky to sign up with a publisher. At least certain publishers, they want the whole shebang, the IP and all that stuff too. But we've built this game to be expandable in a bunch of different directions, so we can work with if you run like a D&D podcast, we can put your characters in Inns and Outcasts really easily. It's just generating 6 characters and balancing them against the rest of the set. But it's really, we can do that for promotional stuff and make great little entry points for people to get visibility. We can also add content that we're designing in there too. So we would like to continue to do that. We really enjoy working with this particular game. It doesn't take us very long to generate new content for it. So usually we could probably put out, I would say, at least a game a quarter, at least for an expansion. And then if we get to a point, we'll probably add like a new, maybe like general mechanic to the game itself to kind of like give a reason for like doing collector's editions or something like that. But yeah, if we can, we definitely would sell through stores. What do you guys think?
That I think you covered it pretty well. That gets my feelings in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, the short answer is we would love to. And we can't do it with just our base funding goal. The base funding goal basically gets the game in your hands, and we don't we break even at funded.
Yeah, we get to say we made a game that got kickstarted.
Mm-hmm. And that's so for those who don't know, our business model is 50% game design studio. So we put out our own games for commercial reasons, or if we're developing something with like a serious intent element, then it's it's going to do whatever it's going to do. But we're going to sell games for commercial consumption, basically for you to buy and play at home and enjoy. The other half of our business model is we offer design services and gamification services to like businesses and educators and nonprofits to basically take their analog print materials and either do like some game space learning elements to them, or add gamification elements to their training materials, their brochures, even their business cards. Like our business card has a game on the back of it to show what we're talking about. And then the goal is to give you extra interaction points with your end user. And so our goal is to do that and give, businesses new ways to stand out. So part of the reason, like we were ready with this game probably like, I would say like last November, right? Something like that.
Yeah, except for a few redesigns and stuff, but the game was like more or less done.
Yeah, we were ready to like get ready to do all the take it to print process at the end of like September of last year, September, October, November, somewhere in that area. We took a break for the holidays, and then we picked up another project from a client, and we did that for a little bit, and that kind of pushed this off a little further. And we kind of, once that project ended, I suppose is the way to to use the terminology.
That's a nice way to use it.
Yeah. Once that project concluded, we kind of said, okay, well, let's get back to doing our thing. So then we did a couple months of research, and then we did a couple months of initial crowd building. And then we were like, okay, we're going to look at Gen Con as our big contact point. We're going to try and build buzz and get everybody interested. Get as much word out as we can. And that's when we hired the Kickstarter guy to kind of give us a lot of guidance on audience building. And here we are, a month after Gen Con. That was kind of our plan. Well, a little more than a month. We got delayed because of the Facebook implosion. That kind of messed up our advertising. So we gave ourselves a week and then a day. So that's how we got to here. But yes, publishing our game, absolutely want to do that. But we're probably not going to continually publish that in a way that we could supply like stores on the regular. That would be something we would probably output to a publishing company of some sort. So after that,
So
long
yeah. So I guess we can go on to some of the other questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Non.
And anybody that is in the chat, feel free to ask a question. That's absolutely what we're here for. So don't be shy. We do have somebody watching the chat to, to hear what you got to say.
One of the ones I have here is, how is the game different now than in its previous iterations?
Oh, well, for one thing, it has art.
Yeah, well, that's yeah.
Like
very true.
In our earliest versions of this game, it was literally like just note cards, and well, it was never note cards, I guess, because we were all stuck in COVID when we were all in lockdown. We couldn't. It was really hard to paper prototype when everybody's miles and miles away from each other. Blake was in St. Louis, I was in Peoria. Jen was in Peoria, but she wasn't involved at the project at the start. In June of 2020, when we started this whole thing, it was Blake and I going like, all right, we're going to see how far and fast we can get in a month. And so he and I both pitched games. And mine was like, okay, here's a bunch of like cards, quote unquote, that I made in Illustrator, and they just had text on them basically. And it was the rough version of this game, but yeah. Then we put some placeholder art, and then eventually at the end of that month, we took the whole project to Jen, and Jen was like, "Oh, this looks fun," and then she was like, "Yeah, I'll make art." So that was our first indication that we had something.
Yep. Once I finished doing all the character art, then I started kind of revamping some of the other components, and then it kind of evolved 3 or 4 times in the art and graphic design uh, areas to where it's at now. So
Yeah.
even from when we did all of our play testing at Gen Con to what it is now, the game um, looks completely different.
Yes. As far as version differences, well, we added actual coins. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
The previous, so we made this as a print and play to start off with, which meant we were kind of constrained to print and play, and we had uh another constraint on the game system, which is that you could never pass something from one person to another. In the original rules for our development process, because we wanted to make this as a game that you could play at home around the table with your family if you're potting together, but we also wanted to make it something you could like point your camera at and play over Discord. So like that's why the interactions don't really originally didn't require anybody handing anything off to anybody else. Like you could put a steel token, like the whole like targeting token has been renamed and redone, and there was a block token that you physically put on your card, and that was there to basically serve as a surrogate of being able to reach over and turn somebody else's card sideways. But we also have coins now, and the coins, I would never intentionally force somebody to cut out currency in a print
No,
in a
no,
print and
no.
play. Well, it can be done, and James Ernest has a great video on how to do it, and you should watch it because that man is my one of my heroes. I love to bits all the work that he's put into to make the print and play model really successful. Like that's him in Cheap Ass Games. That's what they've been doing. That's what they did. I haven't read his book yet, but I really want to. But the man's really good at showing you how to prototype. And I used to like wander the halls of Bradley University when we were both Blake and I were both students at Bradley, and I would go to the kids that are doing their game design 1 class, and I'd be like, "Do you know these videos?" No, and I just thump them over the head until they watch them, basically. So, but no, I don't like to make games that require you to cut out like 1,000 components because you're not going to want to do that. Like you have to have a lot of love for the thing to even put that much effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we want to keep it to something as simple as like if you're doing the print and play, you really only need to cut out the cards. We do have our little player mat in there. That's not really necessary for the game, but it does help a little bit, especially if you're new. And then what else is different?
We changed some wording that
Yeah,
was confusing.
yeah, we finally let go of some artifacts too that have been haunting the game for many moons.
One of the things that came to my mind was the original Discord grid system.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. We had this lofty ambition of being like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if you could treat this game like it was in the Brady Bunch and you were like you had the game board in the middle and all the people around it were limited to like who could interact with whom, and like you turn Discord's like video chat system into the game itself. Like, oh yeah, that'd be so cool. And then we found out immediately that didn't work.
Yeah, we gave it a good go, but it was
Well, it turns out
unfortunately a little rough.
it turns out nobody sees the same thing when they're looking at that grid. Like it's not static, it's dynamic based on your own screen. So it's just like, well, that idea is toast. But it's okay because then we just kind of said, all right, well, we'd played games like Bang, and we're like, oh yeah, Bang has a really good range mechanic. Let's work with that to help limit interactions, because that's the whole reason that we needed to limit interactions, was to keep the gameplay simple. If we had an 8-player game and all 8 players always interacted with all other 8 players, it would be a nightmare for balancing.
Every single person would be blocked except for a couple Thanes.
Yeah. And even then, like, it would make block too powerful. So the only way to counter that would be to make the loot abilities, worth it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't score, and so if you can't score with it regularly, then the payoff's got to be worth it if you do. And so you just kind of get into this power creep / mutually assured destruction scenario. And so we just figured, let's just cap it. The amount of times that people could interact with people would be capped at, we figured 2 was too few times. Like, if you could only interact with the person to your left and your right, the game would be way too slow. And so we bumped that out by 1 more and made it 4 interactions total. And that works pretty well. We're really happy with that. So,
although that did just give me an idea for a future card. So
well, that's
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, you jot that down. Like, we can, like, our whole thing is, like, there are a few things that are sacred that we're not going to break, but, like, for future expansions, just about everything's on the table. One of the things that I really like about the new version of the cards is the block icon is a little more prominent and a little more visible and a little bit more direct as to what it does. And we've talked
it used to get ignored pretty often, so it's a lot better now.
Yeah. So that's part of, like, competing philosophies. I was looking at it for, like, a web page. That's not what I should have been doing. I should have been treating it more like the artifact that it is and looking at how it's held in the hand. So, yeah, we've learned and grown from that. We're not afraid to murder our darlings when it comes to game concepts. I think we have probably at least 20-25 casualties in terms of, like, mechanic design so far.
Yeah.
On the cutting room floor here, and then we're gonna, like, each expansion we're already like, oh no, we can't do that, and then every so often we'll see a discarded mechanic and pick it up and try and rework it and see if we can make it work. But that's the process. That's game design right there. It's just try it, follow the fun wherever you can. And the table setting cards, they got a huge upgrade. Before, they used to be kind of like, those were an artifact, like, from the Discord era. Like, the whole reason they exist is that you have a thing on your square in Discord that tells you, I am player 2. So if you're targeting player 2 on the, like, we used to have a board, and the board had, you'd put all the characters around the board, and then, like, you'd have your representative number on your screen, and that way it was a 1-to-1 match. And then you could be like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna smack the person that's number 2, and they'd be like, oh, but I'm out of range. You're not close enough. It was confusing. But now we have extra utility put into that card, which will make things better for the future. It doesn't really change much for this expansion, but we've tweaked it a little bit to make it more interesting. So
I think we covered that pretty well.
Yeah. You got one, Jen?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Blake, did you have more?
Yeah, I've got more. Let's see. What's a good one? I think it'd be nice to just go through and talk about which ones are our favorite cards.
I mean,
Hey, I know the answers, but the people don't know the answers.
That's okay. Like, there's only one card that could be counted as my favorite, and that is 110% the goblins. I love how they look. I love how they play. And I love every little bit about those little buggers. I'm a big fan of goblins as a concept. I think it's interesting how they always get mutated from one fantasy genre to the other. And, like, like the Pathfinder goblins are very different from the Troll Hunter goblins, which are very different from, like, even like some old English goblins, which were more like a general category that threw a bunch of different things into there. And, like, and if you play other games like, Changeling or any number of fantasy based things. The goblins always have so many different elements to them, and it's just fascinating to see how that changes. So our version absolutely still my favorite, and I like that they are, very, very. What's the word I'm trying to come up with? Uh, they're really well. They're jerks. They're just like, pay me or I'm going to screw over the whole table, and that's just fun. And they can be a really valuable card if you play them right. But it takes a little bit of luck and a little bit of like coercion, social elements to get them to kind of do what they do best.
And the fact that the more goblins you get, the more
Oh yeah,
maniacal the game becomes.
yeah. Multiple goblins on a turn is an eternal head scratcher. I don't think we've ever had a round where it was all goblins, but I think we were close, and that was a bad round.
It was a funny round.
Yeah, it was silly, but we were just like,
There's gambits that you can do with it to try to get out that just slight like one coin edge out of it, and they almost never work, but you gotta try it.
Yep. So that's my favorite. How about you, Blake?
I mean, absolutely the Thane, the dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really love both dwarves and elves, but specifically dwarves who are decked out in like full bling, more or less. Fantasy version of bling, and are just grumpy all the time. It I don't know where. I mean, the grumpy all the time probably just comes from me, but I don't know where the dwarf love specifically
I
comes
mean,
from.
I think they're always like kind of like supposed to be portrayed as gruff, which
Yeah,
can come off as grumpy, or curt. But you can name your dwarf whatever you want. You don't have to name them
and
Kurt.
yeah. um, Also, just like the stalwart, like shield and axe. The shield is as big as his entire body because he's only like 4 feet tall. Just something about that just appeals to me, and specifically, uh, in our case, he's the Thane, so he's got this kind of air of power to him that just very much appeals to me.
Mm-hmm.
And mechanics-wise, I really like just kind of guaranteed money, unless he gets stolen from, obviously. But he's dependable. Every time you play him, you're probably going to get a good payout.
Yeah, he's a decent way to make average income. He has kind of like the lower end of money that he can make. Like I think the max he can get to is 12, right? No, not even
10.
it's 10. Yeah, it's 10
Yeah.
coins, which isn't bad. Like if you can get that, awesome. Uh, but odds are, in a round where everyone's getting blocked, he's going to be one of the few people that's going to still be making money,
Mm-hmm.
unless you get figured out by the thief, and that's what thieves
Right.
are always trying to do. So, Jen, who's your favorite character on this round?
My favorite character has to be the halfling thief. More so for the art, but I'm biased.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, that was the
um,
first character you worked on too, and I know you really kind of fell in love with the whole concept of it while you were working
yeah,
on it. So,
yeah. So the thief is kind of based off of two characters. One is this little, I don't know if he's a gnome, but like this German character named Pumuckl, which when I was little, I lived in Germany and I got one of these little characters. And he has like this bright
Didn't
red
know that.
hair that sticks up all over the place. So that's one of the characters. And then the other one would be Merida from Brave. Like, I love her big, floofy, curly hair. So it's kind of like a mixture of those two characters together and kind of that whimsical fantasy. So bright orange hair, big curly all over the place.
yep.
And then she has her two little sidekick mice. So
I didn't know that you had based her somewhat off of Merida, but I totally see it now. Like
Yeah,
now that you
yeah.
say that, I mean, obviously, it just never clicked for me.
Yep. So, yeah, that's I mean, so the one thing is I have gotten a lot of feedback from the other artists that we've been working with that have had to work with the Thief's Hair, and it is not as beloved across the board. That
Well,
I'm waiting in the chat to see the
yeah.
the message from
Yeah.
Emily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's okay. It's really good and really stylish, and it works well in a drawn illustration, but it's very complex and very difficult to animate. But yeah, it's a really well done design.
I think I would have to say that the most fun character to draw would be the goblins. Um, I have drawn them probably about 10 different times now, for
Yeah.
different images we're going to be using in the future. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I think they have the most personality. Um, and plus, since they're easier to draw than a lot of the other characters, like I can do a lot more with them.
Uh, Emily says she also loves the goblins. So yeah, and I mean they're pretty beloved. Though I would say that their bomb is its own character too, and I do love the bomb.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, if we're counting the bomb, that bomb is so good. Something about that face on it. It's got more personality than I think any bomb has ever had.
I don't know, man. I had those little skull bombs in that D&D game that Levi ran,
Oh yeah.
and those had some personality, or
Yeah.
at least my little goblin that was running around convincing people to step on them was making sure that they had personality.
Yeah.
Uh the goblin skull was a goblin skull grenade or something like that. I
Uh,
think is what it's
It's
called.
it's something like that. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I like to consider it as the goblin whoopee cushion. So the goblin bomb is easy to love, but it doesn't like hugs. I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure if you gave it a hug, it wouldn't mind.
I don't think it would mind. I think you would mind.
Yep. Yeah. So,
It,
oh, go for it.
well, and I was just thinking in the uh, the one thing I feel like uh, we kind of went for the standard fantasy races
Mm-hmm.
to start off with, but we're kind of missing orc half orc kind of thing. So I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the future we can get one of those in, maybe on a 6, because
Well, I mean, so the nice thing about the six is it's always a wild card. So our the first six expansions that we designed in a way that we were like, okay, what if somebody wants to play the game only using goblin or only using halflings or only using monsters or only using elves? So basically, we've mathed out all the different ways that that's going to work with alignment breakdowns and what number they're going to be at or what their initiative value is going to be at. But it's absolutely possible that we can add new races and stuff into that stuff too. But yeah, we could definitely have orcs be a 6. That's certainly possible.
yeah. So where I was leading with that is maybe what kind of characters are you excited for if we get to make some future expansions for this?
Oh, a mimic, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm dying to get like mimics. To me are like such a fascinating concept from a D&D perspective, and I love that they've bled into all sorts of other games. Like they're just all like the fact that there's a game where it's like hide and seek, but the person that's hiding is a mimic. Is like that's great. Like it's a horrifying way to do a VR game, but yeah, it's awesome. So,
I-
and oh, go for it.
I fought a mimic in my Pathfinder game a few days ago, and it was just such a. I'm always so happy to see a mimic show up. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, it's like a mixed blessing, right? Like, oh, cool, that was a neat moment. Now we got to deal with it. Oh no.
I mean, somebody in the party very nearly died,
Yeah.
but you know,
And I
that's
think the
fun.
best part about them is they're dangerous. Like they play on your greed, and like that's such a rough thing to deal with in D&D because you're kind of like not every game goes this way, but the game itself kind of lends very easily towards kill the creature, get the thing. Like a well-run game won't do that, but like that's kind of the trope that's been built up around it. It's part of the kind of like the understood formula. I mean, heck, that's our game is about what happens after you killed the creature and you got the thing. It's like now who gets it?
Mhm.
Like the whole point of the theme of this game is the ensuing argument and fight that happens when you're all divvying up loot around the table.
Unless the table itself is the one arguing for it.
Oh yes,
In this case,
so what we do we want to go in the order we did before? Blake, do you want to go next, or do you want to jump over to Jenny?
I don't care what order, but I can just say I, in role playing games, I tend to play a lot of barbarians, so I'd be happy to get some, variation on a barbarian.
Oh, sure. That won't be hard to work into the
Yeah,
formula at
no,
all. I mean, like,
I mean when I statted out the Thane as a barbarian because I didn't want to have two fighters, and the guard was obviously a fighter, so. Uh, but
guard could be a ranger.
that's true.
We don't know that. Like, like, yeah, yeah, or even there's a couple different ways we can stat these things out. Technically, it could be a paladin too. Be an odd choice, but I'm sure you could stat it out.
I considered paladin.
Mm-hmm. Pally Wally
Anyway,
doodle all the day. But yeah, barbarian easy to work in for sure. How about you, Jenny?
Um, I think my favorite genre would be like the woodland creatures. So like uh you have like the centaur, um like maybe little forest fairies or
yeah,
something.
yeah, kind of face
Um
stuff in general.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um that's kind of I think my favorite genre besides like the pirate genre. Um
I mean, I had to refrain from saying pirate. Um,
um yeah, I mean I like other non-standard races. Like I played the little Kitsune in our Pathfinder game a while back. Like that was pretty fun. Um, so like I think more of like the non-standard races to have those pop up
Mm-hmm.
um, here and there would be kind of neat.
Yeah. And I mean, like, even if we stuck with the formula of the races that we're doing in our, like if we're doing the halfling human god or the halfling human, oh goodness, gnome, elf, dwarf,
sure.
uh, spread, we can always deviate from that with like, we don't have to make 6 cards in expansion. We could do a seventh that's a non-standard race. Um, they just wouldn't really we'd have to balance it because right now like
Right.
one of the things that we're doing right now is this expansion's like, oh, here's the basic permutations. The next expansion actually plays into we have a character that cares about that targets people based on their race, or we have characters that care about alignment, and so those characters get fundamentally weaker or stronger on a meta level based on how many like non halflings there are. If we have a little bubble, like we can work with that balancing a little bit better. But every time we deviate from that, it's like adding, a second monster card or something like that. It just it can screw up the calculus. So yep, can be done. and there's no reason that we wouldn't do it. It's just, we have to approach it with delicate sensibilities, I think is the way to look at that, right?
Yep.
Yep. So, but no, by no means are these the only 5 races that we're going to put in the game. And monster is a general category. I was actually a little remiss at putting goblins in as monsters. They are almost always viewed as such, but I do love a game that I can actually play a little gobby as, because they fun.
Beautiful thing about Pathfinder 2nd Edition is they're a common ancestry. They're like one of the core ones.
It's good stuff. Yeah, it's nice when you don't have to like convert from a monster to archetype into a playable race.
Yeah.
But like I do love watching I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Ziba Shu, who's a big D&D, YouTuber, he had a great game session that he posted in his animated spellbook series, where it was like an all goblin campaign, and it was fantastic because it was like 3 goblins who stole a rod of wonder, and just the absolute chaos that they unleashed trying to escape the city with the
Oh
loot.
my gosh.
Oh, that's the good stuff right there. Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm like, this is what I came to play. But that's also kind of like, you have to have the right GM for that particular adventure, because it's gonna be rough for all parties involved. If the GM's not ready to improvise like crazy, then your range of silliness gets limited quick.
Yeah.
So, all right. Sweet. Well, so we're not probably going to go for the full 2 hours. I mean, if we've still got questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And guys in the chat, if you do want to talk, please feel free to. Like I said, we're happy to answer any questions you have. It's absolutely what we're here for. But we'll continue to do a couple more of these preloaded questions, and then after that, well, we might sign off a little bit early. But odds are we'll probably do this again.
Oh yeah, for sure. If not, maybe somewhat this and somewhat something else for the stream.
Absolutely. Well, we're still going to do some live playthroughs of the game too. So, anybody that wants to get in on that and actually like play in the game on Tabletop Simulator, shoot us a message. Easiest way to do this is at service@gamechangingdesigns. You can message me on Kickstarter as well. I've been pretty quick at responding to those, but if you send to the service@gamechangingdesigns.com, that hits all of our email boxes. So, there's a much higher chance that we'll be able to get a hold of you and get you signed up to play. So, any questions about the prototype or about the game in general?
Well, one of the issues we've had is that we were too efficient in answering our questions, and so we answered multiple of the ones I had written down all in one go. So,
well, that's my problem. I talk a lot.
No, it's not a bad thing. It's
well, that's okay. So I guess one thing that I do want to talk about that I'll bring up is what's going to happen after we get through this Kickstarter campaign. Our goal is, of course, to get the game into your guys' hands as quick as possible. And that's one of the reasons that we're having some issues with getting really cost efficient shipping prices. We've talked to a couple of fulfillment centers, and the problem is that we don't really have a lock on what that's going to run, which is why our shipping prices are so high. But the instant that we get better shipping prices quoted to us, the instant we'll get those lowered, and we'll fix that by basically creating a duplicate of the reward that you're backed at, and you just transfer over. So it should be easy to do on that. Unless we'll also be talking probably with BackerKit to figure out what our final fulfillment method is, and if we can cut that, like if we can like refund you that money and not make you have to like go through hoops, whatever's the simplest method. We'll probably put out a survey to find out what you guys want to do. Because at the end of the day, we want you to be able to enjoy the
Yeah,
game.
we want the game to be cheap and accessible. It's just given some of world circumstances, particularly the shipping is a problem.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess another part of that too is like we're trying to be really honest with our pricing. The $25 price tag is the MSRP for the game, based on what we think the game is valued at. Like if we were at a game store and we were going to buy it, $25 is where we think it is in terms of worth and value. So like what might be different is I've seen some other suggestions where it's like you should have put the shipping cost into the overall cost, and that would have made our game like closer to like $40 a game for like United States shipping. Which I buy $40 games, and that's to me a different level of expectation. When you buy a game for like 40 or $50, there's a level of like components and value that comes with that assumption.
Complexity as well. Like
yeah. So, yeah, that's part of why we're doing the pricing like what we're doing is we've kind of, I mean, obviously we've also priced it to be cost effective at $25, but we did a lot of work to minimize our components down to get to that $25 MSRP, and keep it viable at that state. So if we can hit higher tiers, that means that we can do bulk ordering, and if we can do bulk ordering at bigger quantities, like I mean, we're talking like 3,000, 5,000 units, that kind of stuff. That's when we can start hitting the profitability, kind of like keep re-upping and provide to stores and stuff like that. That's how we could theoretically become a publishing company. But again, we'd much rather just be like distribute through a channel, or distribute through a publisher and let them do the reordering beyond our initial order and let them make money where they can, and give us a chunk of change for our time. That way we can get back to doing what we do best, which is the design work. Because but what comes after Inns and Outcasts? There's a couple things that we'd like to do. I know we have like 3 other games that we want to make, like that are outside of Inns and Outcasts. Like we have a game that we can't really make right now because the pandemic's still a thing. But there was another word game that we had going that was really fun. And there's a project that I personally wanted to kind of get back to, which was kind of like a social impact experience, where we took I actually did this as a competition contestant for Bradley's social impact challenge, where the idea was to design an escape room in Peoria using a local escape room facility, and work with a nonprofit organization that focuses on homelessness advocacy, and basically use that as a call to action. So that kind of fits with the motif of game changing designs, creating change through games. So those are some of the things that we will hopefully be able to do with the profits that we make from this Kickstarting effort. Is either put out our next game or get to work on some of these other projects. Of course, that's my feelings. I guess it's we're a trifecta for a reason. So
I'm with you.
Yep. So, but yeah, the better we do, the more effort and time we can actually dedicate to running game changing designs full time. Like that would be obviously the really great goal would be to be able to do this stuff 100% of our time and really start create elaborate and better projects that get to you guys either quicker or with higher level polish, while we kind of like fill our war chest a little faster and get stuff to you. Because like our whole plan is to, rather than take on a bunch of risk with every Kickstarter campaign, we kind of have to have like a minimum level to cover all the initial costs rather than going to debt for that. So because that just puts a bunch of weight on the success margins of the game and keeps puts the company at risk rather than guaranteeing a return. So if we can run the gambit and get you guys something really cool in the process, that's great. But we also want to be able to keep the lights on so that way we can continue to do work beyond that point. Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, it's been an hour and it's been awesome answering your questions. If anybody has any others, I'm going to keep posting this versions of this form. I'll post a new version that's not linked to this particular date. So that way, when we do our next session, which will probably be next Friday, we can answer any of the other questions you might have. So thanks everybody for contributing and for giving us a little bit of your time.
Yep.
Yep.
See y'all.
Yeah, take care and we'll keep in touch. Let's see.